So, for those of you who are not chronically online, recently there's been a big discussion in the horror genre, specifically with Dead by Daylight adding Jason Voorhees. Now, I want to say this first off. I have never played Dead by Daylight. I don't know what it's like or how different characters and killers work in it. All I know is that it has a lot of killers from different franchises, like uh, a while ago they added Springtrap from the Five Nights at Freddy's series. But a lot of the discourse is around people. Like, there was one person who said that Slenderman was the most iconic internet horror character, and we'll get to that in a bit. But there's a lot of people who are pissed that he didn't make it in over Jason. And again, my argument isn't that Dead by Daylight should or shouldn't have added any characters, or who they should have gone with over the other. That's not my argument. I don't know Dead by Daylight. I don't know whose kit would have worked better, which is why my argument's just down to like the icon status of these characters. Now, about the person who said that Slenderman was the more iconic internet horror character, I can kind of see where they're coming from. On the internet specifically, Slenderman was much more a part of the internet as it grew and became larger in the early to mid 2010s, like 2013 to 2016. It was really big, and it was what kicked off a lot of the internet horror popularity that would come and be capitalized on by a lot of indie horror franchises like Five Nights at Freddy's, like Bendy and the Ink Machine, like like Hello Neighbor. Granted, Slenderman was the one that kicked it off, and he is still, I'd absolutely say that he's more iconic than the neighbor from Hello Neighbor or Bendy from Bendy and the Ink Machine. The only franchise that I would say has more internet popularity and notoriety than it at this point would be the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, which obviously already has representation in the game. However, overall horror, Jason Voorhees is the icon of the entire horror genre, not just on the internet, but in general. If you ask someone to name a character from any form of horror media, 99% of the time, they're going to say Jason. And even if they don't, they're probably going to say someone who does a lot of things similar to Jason, or maybe was part of a blueprint for what Jason would be like. Like Michael Myers is a big example. The first person who I would list off is Leatherface, another big example of like one of the starting parts of some of the traits you would see in a lot of slasher killers that would later go on to be parts of Jason's personality and what he does in the films. Jason is inarguably the most iconic character when it comes to horror as a whole. And honestly, I'm just glad that Jason is in something in the modern day that isn't just multiverses. I'm glad that he's in something horror related. Yes, I know that there's a lot of drama around it, but I may not even play Dead by Daylight, but it just puts a smile on my face to see Jason in anything that's not only multiverses. Granted, it was great to see him there as well. I'm just happy to see that something is being done with him currently, even if they can't do much due to the rights being owned by a different company. I hope that we get like maybe a soft reboot of the Friday franchise once the legal right issues kind of blow over. Same with the Texas Chainsaw franchise, honestly. That 2022 film was awful, and I really want a good Texas Chainsaw film since the first is the only one that's actually really good. But anyway, back to Jason. It's just good to see him on something again. People can argue about whether or not he or Slenderman would be a better fit for DBD, and I'm not going to because I don't know anything about DBD. But for those people who are upset about it, just keep in mind that there's still a good chance at some point Slenderman's going to come to DBD. There are plenty of characters that have a high chance of coming at some point. One of the most obvious ones would be Art the Clown. Granted, like, or I shouldn't say granted, Art the Clown is the most popular modern horror character. Now, why am I saying specifying modern? Because obviously characters like Jason and the other slasher killers are more iconic, but they're also from a different era. They're from like the golden age of horror, which was like mid 70s to early to mid 80s, arguably. You can argue whether it's early or mid, but at the end of the day, it's still likely that Slenderman's going to come at some point. It just didn't happen to be right now. Because if it's supposed to be a collage of a ton of different horror characters that you may be able to have. Sorry, I'm trying to articulate what I'm wanting to say here. Yes, there may be issues with legal rights, but overall, they're still going to try to add as many characters from horror media as they can from the looks of it and the little that I have seen so far. They've already had multiple horror movie characters, like obviously Jason, which is being added now. They had, or they have Leatherface. I think they have all of Chucky, Ghostface, and Freddy and Michael. So they already have the big six of horror when it comes to the slasher genre, at least. And Jason's the most iconic out of any horror character. So I think that now, if anything, may be the time where they go gung ho on other more, uh, I shouldn't say more niche, on other less known or less iconic horror characters, like Slenderman, like what would another example be? I'm kind of, I'm kind of in a draft for internet horror characters. Maybe Granny, but it doesn't. I don't know, Dead by Daylight. I don't know what really fits their style, but I'm just glad Jason's in something, man. And I don't know why people can't just be happy that the most iconic horror character is in something horror related finally. After, I think, 2013 with the reboot was the last official thing. Granted, we have had indie projects like Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in the Snow, but those also are indie projects. Those aren't official and they're not really connected to the franchise. So, yeah, I'm glad Jason's in something again, and I hope that we do at some point get like a soft reboot of the Friday franchise that, and I hope it's treated like Scream 5 was. I haven't watched Scream 6 or Scream 7 yet, but I did really enjoy Scream 5, and I hope that it's a direction similar to that the Friday reboot takes in terms of the care put into it, how they deal with old characters. I don't want it to be something like how Texas Chainsaw 22 did what they did with Sally Hardesty, where they had her come back, fight off Leatherface for just a bit, and then die. Like, yes, I understand putting her character to rest, but also it was done in such a disrespectful way. They tried to do what Halloween 2017, I think it was, did with Jamie Lee Curtis and Laurie Strode, but it just didn't end up working. And a lot of it I feel is partially because the original actress for Sally had passed, but the way that they treated her character and her legacy, it was awful. And I hope that if there is a Friday reboot on the horizon, which I hope there is, I hope that they don't go in like the TCM 22 direction, because it's been a while since we've seen anything from the franchise, and it's been a while since we've seen anything good, because Friday the 13th is obviously one of the, or I shouldn't even say one of, it is the largest horror franchise of all time, with the popularity of the character and everything that comes along with it. And it has, I think, 12 or so movies? That we've had a lot of very shitty movies. And from what I have heard, as I said, what I've heard, this is all hearsay because I haven't been able to watch any of the Friday movies, unfortunately. But most people say that the sixth was the last good one. And I hope we get something new. I'm glad that Jason's in something again, and I hope that this is a good sign. I'm happy. So I'm going to leave it at that. See ya.